Hey everyone, Jake here with Clackacraft Drift Boats. Hey, I'm here with my buddy Nick Amato.
Howdy.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. Yeah, we're here to have a little fun today. Just a quick video. Again, if you like these videos, hit like and subscribe down below. We just kind of having some fun. Nick stopped by today and I said, hey, let's talk about jig fishing because it's that time of year. We both really enjoy it. I learned pretty much how to jig fish from this guy and some other friends as well. So I got a couple rods rigged up here. Kind of the fun way we like to fish and, you know, all that good stuff. So I've got some pretty jigs here. You can see, you know, some steelhead jigs, some different colors from a friend of mine up in Washington, Cole Baxter. Thanks, Cole. Awesome. You know, there's some difference. People go jigs. You know, these are your steelhead jigs. These are salmon jigs here for mostly co-fishing. Chinook will buy them too, right?
For twitching.
Yep, twitching jigs. So, but for sake of this video, we're going to talk about steelhead jigs. I think all these. What are these ones right here? I think these are all like 1/8 ounce jigs.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Maybe a couple quarters on there.
Yeah, they're all 1/8 ounce.
1/8 ounce jigs, yeah. You know, it's some different colors here. They all work, you know, different areas. I mean, you know, what do you think?
Oh, they absolutely. And they're so much fun to fish with. So we've known each other now, what, almost probably 20 years or so?
20 years, yeah.
20 years.
Maybe a little longer. You know,
so we used to fish together a lot, right, in the beginning.
Yep.
I remember I would always have like an extra jig rod. That was back when they weren't really that popular. And it's just amazing how versatile they can be for so many different ways. You know, you can cast all kinds of different areas, fish all kinds of different water. So I've really enjoyed using them over the years.
Yeah, I mean, it's a game changer when you can really tune in jig fishing because you're able to, you know, hit all that different pocket water as you taught, you know, with rocks, you know, short little spots where it'll steal at a fish, you know, I should say bite, you know, it can be anywhere a lot of times, you know, in the long flat stretches to boulder gardens, you know, we found them in big white water areas and there just happens to be a little soft water spot and guess what works? These guys, you know.
Yeah, and the two things I really love about jigs, having grown up drift fishing back in the 70s, you know, with my dad and pencil lead and, you know, spin glows and what have you, you hardly ever have to re-rig. So it makes it nice. It's just so simple.
Yeah, simple. A lot of fun. There's all kinds of different brands out there. They all work, you know. But, you know, for the sake of this video, we just kind of set two different rod setups right here. The first one is kind of the one I might have talked about in a video in the past, but the old standard fixed float. This happens to be, what, an 1/8 ounce setup here.
Yep, with a fixed float.
I mean, I kind of talked to you guys about it. Nick probably might explain this a little better than me, why he likes these wire floats, or I should say
it's just a really simple rig. It's fixed, and you can quickly adjust the depth. You can fish it from the bank or easily out of a drift boat. So this was kind of my go-to rig for years and years and years.
Yeah,
so it doesn't work quite as well in bigger water though, because you're going to need something a little bit heavier and something to keep the jig down. But for fishing out of a boat or small streams, it works great.
Yeah, I like it because one of those rod setups you could, and you probably told me this, so I might repeat something you said, but you could pretty much have this set up in the back of your pickup car, anything. You might be driving down the coast this time of year. For me, going down to Lincoln City, stop on the Salmon River right there. There's a bunch of killer pocket water. Get out, hike around a little bit, and you can fish this thing, and it's very effective,
Yeah, all you need is just a few floats and a few jigs, just simple as that.
Yeah, and then you go to any river and fish this. This is, again, why we like this fixed float, because I may not know the bottom depth, you know, on a river I'm not used to, and that's what's really helped me be more productive is fishing, because I call it an indicator, but, you know, it'll tell you what's going on in the bottom here, you know. Even back in the day, Nick would be floating his float laughing at me because I'd have a belly in the line and the thing's doing this. And he's just like, I told you to, you know, mend that line, meaning, you know, you want to lift your rod tip up, get your line more in direct with your float, take the belly out of your line essentially to keep this thing fishing as natural as possible. And that's, you know, pretty much like that. And this, you know, if it's ticking, you know.
Right, and you can tell where the bottom is. Now, funny story, my brother would always fish him dragging on the bottom, and it would drive me crazy, but he'd usually catch as many fish as me because you know, probably pop down into deeper slots or what have you.
Yeah, go bouncing around, going a little deeper than you. And again, you know, another thing to keep in mind too, and I've mentioned this in the past, is, you know, I like to make that jig perpendicular to the line, and you could probably explain that. I mean, because fish don't hit
Right,
them.
yeah, sometimes fish absolutely want to have a dead drift. So
Yep.
the dead drifted presentation is key. If there's any tension on the line, just like if you're fly fishing with an indicator, sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes you can catch them swinging in the tail out. But
Yeah.
sometimes it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, because they turn on them, you know, and that's the biggest thing too. They don't hit them coming directly at them. They're coming around hitting them, and I mean, how many times
they can come from any angle?
Yeah.
Literally from down or up or
Oh, yeah.
side.
that's
And chase them.
chase them? Yeah, well, yeah, I've seen them chase them on a retrieve too, you know. And I'm,
Yeah.
whoa, they're chasing that thing. Better soften up on reeling that thing. And that's the thing too, you know, is these jigs a lot of times too, and he'll probably tell you this. I mean, I said 100% of the time, but I'd say 90% of the time they're always right here. I mean, very rarely do you have them upside down in the tongue or.
That's what I love about when I first started bobber dogging, and I was with Josiah, I think, on one of the first trips, and he's like, reel, set the hook, do this, do that, do that. And the beauty with this rig is you can be looking behind yourself or not even paying attention, and it literally sets the hook half the time all by itself.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen that
The
too.
fish is always hooked in the mouth.
Yeah, summer steelhead fishing where literally I'll say, why is that fish jumping? And then seconds later, this thing's ripping like this up out of the water. I mean, you'll see the fish get stuck before your floats even disappeared because they're just hot fish, and they get poked like that. They just instantly out of the water, which is a lot of fun to see that happen. But so that's kind of one setup we do a lot. Again, very productive. Can be a little harder to fish, and that's when I'm going to go into the next rig. You know, a lot of guides won't necessarily fish this way. They know the bottom depths, you know, the river where they're fishing at, so that they'll down the coast. They fish it every day, so they know every inch and stretch and foot of the river. So they're going to go, hey, you know, adjust your float 2.5 feet, or adjust your float, you know, 5 feet, 10 feet, big deep hole, whatever, and they're allowed to do that. So that's where this setup comes kind of in handy. You kind of show that one there to them.
There you go.
That's I guess you would call this a inline lead setup. I mean,
Yeah, sliding float rig
Yep.
with the inline sinker. So, like you're saying, I mean, the main advantage here is you can fish heavier water and
see that little
make
guy.
longer casts and get it down quickly. And then you can use as little or as much weight as you like. This is, what is this, a
half ounce float here.
half ounce float, then a 3/8 ounce sinker, and then a 1/8 ounce.
1/8 ounce jig head. So
Yeah, so it matches up to the
half ounce, you know, essentially
Yeah.
3/8.
So you could use a bigger float and a bigger sinker and just have
Yep.
it all match. Big
Yeah.
float.
Quarter ounce 3/8, and then you got a little worm, you know, it adds a little density to the setup too.
So you could put a jig down there
So-
or a worm.
And I always ask, probably in the past, am I adjusting for the bottom depth off of this or off of this on this setup?
And that's going to depend on who you're fishing with.
Yeah.
If you're fishing with a guide, sometimes they have a particular way that they like to determine things.
Yep. So I mean, you want to obviously not be dragging bottom. So that's where this slide float comes in. And you can see with these slide floats, if you're not familiar with them, nice thing is some of these bobber knot stops, I guess you can say, they come on a little tube where they're easy to put on. In this setup, we have this up on the braid here. We use like a 20 or 30 pound braid here, you know, high vis braid. See, it's a yellow braid. It's a little dull here on this one, but therefore you can see, you know, the line out there when you cast it out. And then you got adjustability here. We put some a bobber stop on the bottom and a bobber stop on the top. Some people won't even run the bottom one.
Yeah, the heavier the sinker and system you're using,
Yeah.
the less likely you'll need the bottom.
Yeah, this, you know, this, and again, this is the reason I guess a guide would use this setup too, is mostly because it's a little more weight, so it's easier to cast out there. You know, where the other one, the fixed float that we use is so light. You know, somebody that may not be proficient at casting is going to cast it out there and maybe just have a hard time getting it over if you're off the hole, 20, 30 yards.
Yeah.
Where this, you can get over there. It's easier to cast. It makes it a little bit more easier for for a new fisherman or somebody that's not real comfortable jig fishing.
And it'll stay down too.
Yeah.
The lighter stuff will pull to the surface.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Quick pocket water stuff. You know, if you're fishing again, go back to heavy, or we'll fish behind some of those rock piles and different things in fast water. We might be moving through, and I'll be rowing, or Nick will be rowing, and hey, cast behind that rock over there. This setup works really good
Right,
for that.
exactly. Yeah,
Yep.
we do that up in this exact rig up in Forks all the time, and
Yep.
boy, you can just get into every little pocket along the edge of the
Oh, yeah.
river and get it down right now for those big fish.
Yep, and that's, I mean, you can explain a little bit why we use worms versus, this is a jig head with the, what is that, a red and black, kind of a clear red, black tail on it. Very, obviously I fished this a lot of places with Nick and other
Yeah, that's
people.
been a
Pretty effective little
productive
setup, with the white jig head,
combo.
but, they seem to like the worms.
They absolutely like the worms. Some days they like the worms. Some days they like jigs a little bit better. It just all depends. The funny thing too is you wouldn't think it, but color does matter. Sometimes they want a certain color pattern or certain type of thing, and it can change.
Me personally, when I fish this, is probably bigger, heavier water. I remember a couple times we were up in Forks and we had a guy with us. I don't remember his name at the time, but we'd go down to big water runs and he'd cast way up behind the back of the boat and he'd pretty much mend his line by reeling the float towards him. And he'd pick up fish.
Yeah, and that's great water to cover. You've got those big fish pushing up in the edges of the rapids, and
just
that's
different stuff, big water.
Definitely a way to get to them.
Yeah, it's fun to do it that way. It's good. Again, it's good to have some different setups in your boat, but again, stick with what you're confident with. Play around a little bit. If you're always changing, you're probably not fishing. So, if you can afford to get a couple different rod setups in the boat, maybe get, especially this time of year, if you're trying early in the season, you're trying to find fish. Try something a little different. You might be on the river like the Clackamas, the coast, especially the Clackamas, a lot of different water. And this time of year, those fish will sit in completely different water than we usually fish. It just seems weird. I don't know what it is, but they're coming in. Maybe they're just coming in the river, searching around, finding their area where they want to kind of hang out. They're new fish to the area. Even though, we see them come back every year, they're new fish, So they're coming in and settling into the spots that they feel comfortable in, because steelhead like that lazy, comfortable water where they feel comfortable and away from birds, prey, whatever, So it's kind of searching out for them. And that's another thing nice about a jig to kind of go into it too is, especially this fixed float setup that I've learned to use is, the river's kind of especially a couple spots I can think of on the Clackamas where it almost will trench in like this and then come back up and trench out, and those fish will spread out in that stuff. And literally, you'll go, oh, it's getting deeper as you go out, but it's not. It's literally, those fish will be sitting in a pocket and then going back up. So I've noticed that, and I call it grid in the river a little bit, because we know they're there, right? There's some acclimation spots. They're there. They're not there. I don't know where they're at, but we kind of know where they're at, figuring it out. And we're looking for them. So where you can go down, and I might cast 10 feet out in the river right there, and my float's going through nice, and I cast 12 feet out, and I'm like, I'm dragging bottom. That's weird. And that's where that float comes in super, super handy.
Right, yeah, you can absolutely gauge the bottom.
Yeah, and I'll instantly shorten it up real quick, and then I'll there, because we're kind of always playing around in our minds. It's kind of like a game. Everybody does it a little differently, but I'm like, okay, I did that 3 passes. I'll do 2 passes there, 3 passes there. I'll do 2 more passes up here. It's kind of fun with this setup, and so if I'm not dragging bottom, I'm fishing. And that's the biggest thing too. Like he said, the fish will turn and bite on them, but I truly believe, at least this is all my opinion, is if you're not dragging bottom and you got it close to the bottom,
right, close to the bottom,
you're gonna have your best shot at one of those. And there's another thing too we can go into, is and you might talk about this. I learned this from him, is bead trailers.
Sure, yeah, you could definitely add just like a fly fishing rig, add a small leader to the back of the hook here, and fish a little egg.
Probably
a little bead.
12, 15 inches off the back of this thing, a little bead.
12.
Just something you feel good about size. It could be the size of the jig head, a little larger. 12 to 15 inches, little trailer on the back of this thing. Might give you another opportunity. Might miss a fish, but it's something else to kind of tease them a little bit, see what you can do. So, lots of different jig patterns. I have some of my favorites. The nightmare pattern, the pink this time of year, the pink and white contrast. I know a lot of friends up in Washington will fish these more chartreuse, orange. It seems like, I don't know why. It's like I see a lot of that up there. Down here we'll fish some darker pinks, but these will work down here too, obviously. There's steelhead, but these darker color ones, they'll work early in the morning. I talked to a young man one time that said he fished black jigs first. And this is, again, going back to his game and his head, how he steelhead fished. He would fish a dark jig through the hole for 10 to 15 passes through the hole. Then he would lighten them up a little bit, do like a black and red. Then he'd go to like a white, black, and red. and then you go to this was this was the way he did it, and he felt like it really worked because he's searching out what he thought would the time of day and when they're biting, and he catalog it all. It's kind of cool. So it's kind of like, again, it's fun. It's a game. These aren't very expensive. There's different ones out there. Figure out what jigs you like to use, fish them, different float styles, fish them. It all works, right, Nick?
It absolutely.
Yep.
You bet. And like you say, changing the colors is important. You know, if you had a bunch of different people in the boat, you might want to have them fishing different colors till you kind of get zeroed in on what's working that day, or just depending on how you're doing it. If you're just fishing a single hole, from the bank, you're going to definitely want to go through it with 2 or 3 different colors.
Yeah, for sure. And there's other setups that we're not really talking about. We're just kind of talking about 2 of the more basic ones that you'll see people fishing. There's taking, some people take split shot down the line. When I fished in Canada, they use the dink style floats, and they would actually literally every 10 to 12 inches put either a spawn sack with some weight on it. They'd batter them down their line because they fear like it lays out in the river, and it almost like drift fishing them.
Yeah.
It's interesting,
you can do that with a jig too.
Yeah.
And that would get them down in some of the heavier, quicker water.
Yeah, everybody does a little differently. Another big thing we do too, we didn't really talk about it much, but the rivers allow you to fish bait. We tip them with, I know the guys down out of Tillamook, a lot of the guides tip the jigs with shrimp. So shrimp tails, and that's very, very common.
And you could tip them with the spawn bag too.
Oh yeah, spawn bag too. So there's all kinds of options to get them to, biggest thing too on these jigs though, you want to use the correct scent if you're going to do it, like a water soluble scent. I use a Procure one, which I really like. The guys there make a really good water soluble, and that means it won't destroy your feathers. You get oil in these feathers, it's going to just kind of turn into a gob, essentially. So you kind of ruin the jig unless you could really clean it, which is probably impossible. So you're best to toss that one and get a new one if you made a mistake on that. But if you guys have any questions, or you want me to do a video on something else, or hit me up on the comments there. Again, Nick, thanks for coming out, hanging out.
Yeah, I love.
We're doing some more videos together here. We're kind of, this is just one we're sitting here BSing, and we say, let's talk about jigs for a minute because it's early steelhead, and I'm kind of excited about getting out there. He is too. So hell, maybe we'll do this in the boat next week. Want to do one in the boat next week?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's do it. Rob's in the back. He wants to do it too with us.
There's
so
some fish in the river for sure.
Yeah, there's some fish showing up on the Clackamas. It's like middle of December here. So we're excited about that. Maybe we'll get Justin up from Angler West to do some filming. We'll get something cool like that too. But again, thanks for watching the video. Hope we did okay job for you guys. Again, if you have any questions, hit us up. If you like the video, like and subscribe it. Love to have you guys' comments on it, and we'll do some more fun stuff. Right on.
On.
Yeah.